And we are live.
And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the Marketing Rules Live, and we are the ThinkinCircles team. I'm Cass Allenby. I'm one of the marketing consultants here, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues, Richard, Fiona, and Tayla. We're all very happy to be with you this lunchtime. And today we are going to be talking about employer branding, but not just as a hiring strategy, it's as a growth strategy for recruitment agencies. And obviously we'll go into a little bit more detail about that during this session. I think it's probably worth just starting off with a quick, for anyone that's not completely sure or gets confused, the difference between your brand and your actual employer brand. Because I think sometimes the terms do get used a bit interchangeably and mixed up in terms of their true meaning. So I think obviously your brand is your market messaging, what you're putting out to your clients, to your candidates, what effectively your reputation says about you, how you present yourselves to the wider market. Your employer brand is all about your employees and your potential employees. And effectively, it is what they are saying about you or thinking about you when you're not in the room. So what are your current employees and what are the people that you're wanting to attract? What are they thinking and saying about you? And I think for a lot of recruitment agencies, it can often be overlooked, it can often be underinvested, but it really is a long-term strategy that requires the right kind of input into it, the right kind of thought behind it, just like you would put behind your normal brand. Because it's all about getting the right people in your business. And we know recruitment companies are always wanting to hire more, experienced or more junior recruitment staff, whatever their growth strategy is. But we're looking at this from a very particular point today. So I think we'll just start off having a bit of a chat about why recruitment agencies should think about their employer brand, why they should think about it as a growth strategy rather than just a hiring tool, bums on seats. Does anyone want to kick off, or shall I?
Yeah, I'll kick off if you want.
Great.
I mean, employer branding is so important to all employers, but I think to recruitment companies, it's so important to have the mindset that having a strong employer brand is not just about keeping your employees happy. It's also about profits, because that is the basis of profits, because any company is only as good as its employees, and having the best employees, particularly for a recruitment company, is essential. And never mind the cost of hiring people, but it's about hiring the right people and the right personnel. So your employer brand is far more than just getting a useful and a productive bums on seats. It's about making profits. It's about reducing the risk to the agency. It's about being successful. It's an all-encompassing strategy which adds business growth and business profitability. So I mean, it's one of those things really which I think should be considered as a profit making consideration as much as anything else. Never mind just getting the very best employees so you can be the very best company out there.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're right, and I think it's it's about attracting you want the right people working for you, don't you? You want not just Absolutely. Well, this person looks like a good recruiter on paper. It's like, are they actually going to fit with our existing team? Are they going to fit with either who we are as a company now or where we're trying to go as a company? We're trying to slightly change our culture, perhaps. And I think it's about, a lot of firms talk about like productivity and efficiencies and all those sort of things. And I think having the right people in place is all a big part of that productivity boost. So yeah, I think you're right. Hi, Tayla.
Go ahead, Tayla.
So I want to just add on to that I also definitely feel that employer branding has become so much more important recently, since everything has gone online and there's so many jobs that are like remote now and outsourced. Just gonna read off my notes, yeah. But I definitely think it's because a lot of people will research businesses before they ever join the actual business, and that they look at leadership profiles, they look at how active the team is on LinkedIn, and they look at what type of content that agency or that business is putting out, and they see if like it's inconsistent or generic, or and they try to see if they lose trust before that conversation has even started. I feel like you do like your research before you even actually go ahead with that first initial maybe onboarding call, screening call. And me as a person, if I am going to want to go work for a company, I would just, I want to see clarity, their development within the company, their culture, how their leadership structure is like. So if a recruitment business cannot clearly articulate what it stands for, someone else will. And employer branding is no longer optional, in my opinion, because consultants have choice and they are choosing based on perception as much as a package deal that you get from a company.
I think that's really interesting. You made a point there about, obviously, people can go online and they can find out a lot of information before they've even engaged with the company, or maybe even realized that they're looking for people to work there. And I think the really interesting thing about employer branding is that everyone, regardless of whether they're a marketer, regardless of whether they're a recruiter, everyone has at some point applied for a job, unless you're a very, in a unique position where you've never had to do that. But most people have been through that process of where do I want to work? Who do I want to work with? What sort of firm do I want to work with? I want a firm that's got these kind of values, and maybe going out and looking for those firms before you even apply. And I think that's a massive, massive thing. And I think if recruiters aren't aware of that, and if they're not kind of presenting the right information for people who are at that stage of just inquiring and just investigating, it's a massive missed opportunity, isn't it?
Can I just add to that point? There's tens of thousands of recruitment businesses in the UK. Like, I think it's well over 40,000. I had the number a while ago. I don't know what it is now. And it stems from everything from the tiny one-man band right up to the big, massive multinationals. And what employer branding fundamentally allows you to do is to differentiate yourself from other people in many respects, to make you an employer of choice. Because fundamentally, especially here in the UK, where there is a competition for talent, again, to Richard and Tayla's point earlier, there is a competition for the same talents. So you want to make sure that your business is the brand that people want to work for. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
I think Tayla made an interesting point about saying that there's so many recruitment companies out there, and they're all talking about their employer brand online in order to attract people. And they're all saying, a lot of them saying very similar messages about benefit packages and things which make that company a really great place to work. But I think the most important thing, and this is what companies and recruiters need to understand, is that their employer brand needs to be authentic, so that the actual reality of the employer brand is truthful to the messages they're saying to people who may end up working for them. Because obviously everybody can spin a story. Everyone can say we offer this, this, and this. We've got a wonderful, inclusive employment environment. We've got a great DE&I policy. We've got this, we've got that. But unless the company is actually systematically executing that employer branding and doing the right thing, day in, day out, and is authentic to that employer brand, then it means nothing. And that's also something which has to come out in reality. It's not just about talking about an employer brand, it's about living it. It's about being an employer brand, about being real. And I think that's something which is very important. And that's ultimately because you can say all these different things on adverts to potential recruiters, and they can choose on paper which one's going to be the right one. But if they don't live the employer brand, once that person comes to work for them, then they've got the same problem, because they're just going to leave after 6 months. So it's important to be authentic, and that's the real crux, I think, of what an employer brand is. It's what that company really does deliver.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's that it's not just even when they've joined the firm. It's before it's that whole recruitment process, isn't it? From start to finish, every touch point that potential candidate, and then hopefully going on to be an employee, has. If we're saying it's one thing over here, and then they're coming for an interview, and that's a completely different experience and completely different mixed messages, that's not great. If they've been sold the dream of it, maybe their dream is flexible working, and a relaxed environment and all this sort of stuff, and actually they come into it and it's actually really not. It's very high pressured, high performance. It's that authenticity, as you mentioned, Rich. It's kind of about saying, okay, well, actually, if this is our environment, let's own that message, because then people are gonna. It's not about getting the most applications by telling people what we think they want to hear. It's about being realistic about, this is our environment, and actually it's better that we have less applications but from the right people, so people will self-select effectively, because the time it takes as well to find people, to interview people, to onboard people, which kind of goes on to one of the next points I was going to sort of discuss, which is I guess the hidden or not so hidden costs of when you hire the wrong people into your firm, both financially and operationally. Those can be massive. I mean, there's statistics out there, I think, on what the average cost of a bad hire is, and it's tens of thousands of pounds, or in some cases hundreds of thousands of pounds in what that means to your business.
That's millions in rands.
But also on the flip side, the benefit for the organisation, the long-term performance benefits of getting the right people in place. So what do we think about that in terms of the hiring of the wrong people?
Yeah,
and the hiring. It's so simple when you say it like that, but it's
I think it comes back to one of the first things I said, really, which is about the employer brand being not just about getting good people, but it's a profit. It's a risk reduction, profit orientated goal. It's something, if you get it right, because you're not wasting money and resources and time employing the wrong people who are going to leave, people who are going to be unhappy. You get in the very best. Nick, as I said previously, it's a company's only as good as its employees. And by getting the right employees and keeping those employees happy and satisfied and long-term, and you're not wasting costs on recruitment and time and effort, it just comes down to money at the end of the day. It comes down to profitability. So there's a very clear correlation between employer branding, a strong employer brand, and profit and money. And that's the thing which mustn't be overlooked. And
especially when it comes to recruiters, because there is a reality of when a recruiter joins a new firm of particularly if they're a little bit more junior and less experienced, but even more experienced hires, they are a cost to the business for the first few months or so until they start fee earning and covering their head. So they are a cost to the business, and the better fit they are for the company, the quicker they're going to get up and running, the quicker they're going to start making those fees. And if they're a bad fit, if they're the wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad recruiter or a bad person. It's just probably a lot that they're just the wrong fit. And they're going to take longer to make those fees. They're possibly going to disrupt people around them, whether the behaviors aren't quite right for that firm. It can create quite a big ripple effect for having a person.
Part and parcel of a good employer brand, of course, is training, induction, so all of those things. If the company is authentic to its employer brand and looks after its employees correctly and nurtures them in the most appropriate way, they can work around those kind of problems. Obviously, they have to go through the recruitment process. And if the recruitment process is done properly and you get the right person, the best candidate, it's also about the way they're looked after once they join the company. And that's all part of the employer brand, of course, as well. Right from induction through to employment and offboarding as well. If people do want to learn, do want to leave the company, learn why they want to leave and try and improve from that as well. So it's an end-to-end journey.
I just want to add on to that. With employer brand, there's much that we do in marketing that it's very seldom, it's not always measurable in marketing. We can take it so far. But I think there is a definite return on, I know there's a definite return on investment to employer branding because it is measurable. It's measurable from the cost of hire through to retention, through to the productivity of that particular consultant or that person that you're hiring. So there is an end-to-end return on investment when it comes to employer branding. So it's surprising that not as many companies jump on it and truly live it in the way that they should, because as I say, there's some things in marketing which are a wee bit difficult to measure. Employer branding isn't one of them.
And that's a really good point, is that employer branding should be viewed as you would your normal branding and marketing, in the sense that an investment and reducing your hiring costs, in the sense that if you do it well, people will reach out to you to want to work for you. People will be applying to you rather than you going out looking for people and spending money on recruiters and spending money on job boards and spending, if you've got a really strong employer brand, you will get those inbound applications, those inbound inquiries from people. And and so it becomes an investment, and that ROI is that your cost per hiring head goes down. So I think that's a really good point, Fiona. Just to say a quick recap and welcome to anyone who's just joined us or recently joined us. We are the ThinkinCircles team. We are talking today about employer branding as a growth strategy for recruitment agencies. So one of the things I thought would be interesting for us to talk about next is just how we've sort of already touched on some of these, but sort of how can agencies better communicate that reality of their culture and the environment? How can they get that across to people before they join the business? What are some tips that we can give people? And as part of that, we've obviously kind of touched on the authenticity side of things, and why it's more effective to be authentic than trying to portray something that's perfect. Oh, hi Fiona. Not Fiona, Tayla. Fiona was like, I don't know.
Yeah, you're getting your redheads mixed up there, so you are.
Fiona's the natural. I'm the fake and wannabe.
I'm too rolled up to be able to concentrate. Hey, Tayla.
I lost my train of thought there. Oh, yes. So we spoke about this when we weren't on live, but basically it's what employer branding is, what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I definitely feel, well, it's not really a tip, because it's not like you can go to your employees and be like, go talk good stuff about me online. You kind of need that to actually be natural and authentic. But I would basically, how would I say? Because obviously where Rich touched on the fact that you can say all these things, but if you don't actually put it into place, it's just a bunch of nonsense and it's false and it's fake. I would say that people actually looking at, I don't know how to get this across now. I've actually put myself in a tongue twister. But basically what actual employees are putting out on their LinkedIns or their profiles, I think at the end of the day, you mentioned now with how many recruitment firms and agencies there are, but I do think that the word spreads very quickly. So your inconsistencies with, let's say, hire failures, it can spread and that word can get out. And, someone who's not, if you already mess up in that interview process, they never actually really had a loyalty to you. And that can spread so quickly. They can just turn around and say, I actually dealt with this so-and-so and they were horrible to me. And somebody that they're chatting to could say, well, the same thing happened to me. And those stories spread like wildfire. So you really do need to protect yourself in every stage, like you did say earlier on.
Yeah. There's again, there's some statistic about, how many more people you're likely to tell of a bad experience than you are of a good experience. So bad news travels much faster. And yeah, there's with things like Glassdoor and things like that around, obviously people are always checking out reviews. So you have to be very mindful of the experience that you're giving people. 100% Tayla, because it's, people will just go and talk, and usually people are, they'll share it with their connections, and they are likely to be similar people that you may want to be talking to in terms of potential hires. So.
I just wanted to add, I do think that's also where people need to do like extra research, or where a company needs to go even further when chatting about their employer branding to keep it consistent. So it's not just something you say once or put out once and then you've got bad things piling up against it. Rather have your truth and keep putting that out consistently.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of the ways that recruitment firms can get that authentic message out? So one of the things I often speak to clients around is sort of, staff testimonials, staff stories, that kind of, thinking is kind of, you want to profile who it is you're trying to hire, and find people within your company who reflect what's best and tell their stories.
Sorry, Kat, I'm interrupting.
No, you go.
No, I just want to say, I think that's a really valid point about testimonials, about case studies, about how you're putting a message out there. The one thing I would say about employer brand is that an employer brand is owned by everybody in a company. So everybody needs to buy into it. So I think we've all probably worked with businesses where it's the marketing team that are trying to drive the employer brand, but it's not really up to market. Marketing can wrap elements around the employer brand, but the employer brand is lived by HR, talent acquisition, the C-suite, and every management and every person, not even every consultant. So it's that element of, how do you drive your employer brand? Well, you have to really embed it within your company in general, and then it should go out to via the LinkedIns of this world, via the case studies, et cetera, via your website. I think that's the downfall of quite a few employer brands that I've seen, where it's all, I hate saying it, but it's all pretty pictures, but there's no backup behind it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
I was just thinking, I mean, the whole employer brand, I was saying before, it's an end-to-end process, and even during the recruitment process, I think there's a moral code as well, which companies need to have, because if a company is morally pure, for want of a better word, and treats everybody who comes into contact with that company in the right way, it's going to reflect, because as Tayla said, a bad word spreads like wildfire. I think Kat said it, apologies. A bad reputation spreads like wildfire. So even people who've applied for a job or shown interest in the company, don't just ignore their application. Send them a letter, send them a communication saying, thank you for your interest in the company. You're not suitable at the minute, but would appreciate any feedback you've got, even for people who haven't got a job. It just portrays a positive image about the company. Everything about the company needs to be truthful and honest, and and get that positive message across, because that's the kind of messages externally to the company which are going to spread out there and people are going to listen to, and they're going to react to that. So I think it's very important to be authentic and genuine and kind and morally correct with every kind of outgoing message you can, and reflect that on your internal branding and communication with all of your employees as well, even ones that are leaving. So it is that end-to-end communication about the company from a person perspective. It's very important.
I think we talk a lot about sort of the authenticity of it and stuff, and I think it's also about how recruitment firms discover what that authentic message is. Not just about what the leadership team says it is. So it's about the process that you need to go through before you start producing the content, before you update the careers page, before you say, hey Joe, can you record that staff testimonial for us telling us how great it is to work here? There's a process that's got to go on even before that. And that's the audit, that's the strategy, that's the, okay, what's our external messaging currently saying about us? And also talking to your staff and saying, what is the reality of working here? Because we might be saying it's this, but the reality that staff are experiencing might be something very different. In which case, you either need to do some serious work to change the culture to be to work on your culture, to make it what you want it to be, or you need to change the messaging to accurately reflect what's going on internally. And again, it can't just be the leadership team coming in and saying, well, this is obviously our values. This is obviously what we stand for. This is obviously what it's like to work here. We produce fruit bowls on a Friday. Whatever it is. FYI, your culture is more than a beanbag and a bowl of fruit. But it's that lived reality, isn't it? It's like, actually, what are the lower levels of staff saying? What are the managers saying? What are the consultants saying? What are the back office staff saying? Because they're important in all of this as well. And actually kind of doing that research. That's and that might be through focus groups, that might be through staff surveys. And I think kind of Rich maybe mentioned this, getting feedback from potential candidates that have been through your recruitment processes as well. How did you find this? Is there something we could have done better? Using those people to continually inform and engage, all with the aim of making those high quality hires so that you become a more profitable firm at the end of the day. That's all this is ultimately aiming towards, isn't it?
Yeah. It doesn't matter who you employ. If they're a good person, there could be a fantastic person, the best person in the world. If you've got a toxic culture within the business, or there is a systematic problem with working there, they're not going to stay for very long. And unless you ask them why they've left on the exit process, you're never going to correct it. You're never going to fix it. And sometimes companies can't fix it, I suppose, but comes back to being authentic and
that's a different one. I reckon
that's a different one altogether. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big one.
I definitely also just so for some interviews that you go for now, you do a personality test so that the people that are employing you kind of know how you like to be managed and things like that. And I also just think it varies from person to person. So for example, we all love ThinkinCircles, but someone could come on board and say, not for me, but all of us love it. It's just a personality thing. So that's where I also think that, definitely taking into consideration the different types of personalities, the way people like to work. And it's just so much that you need to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I feel like this is something I could talk forever about, but it's we're nearly up to our half hour. Is there anything that anyone else wants to add before we wrap up?
Well, besides if anyone and everyone found this valuable for deeper insights into what I and the team think about certain topics within recruitment marketing, you guys can go subscribe to our LinkedIn newsletter, which is in the description, and it's called Inside the Circles.
Brilliant.
That was excellent, Tayla.
I'm never going into ads. I'm never doing advertising.
That was a perfect ad. It was so polite. It was lovely.
I hope everyone's found this session useful, and I hope we've helped to provide insight as to why having a strong employer brand is a part of building a successful agency, is not just part of bums on seats, and kind of the importance of that in attracting, hiring quality people, retaining those people, and why it requires a lot more strategic thinking and long-term planning, and the investment and attention that it deserves. And obviously, if you need any help with your employer brand, ThinkinCircles team is here to help and support. And you can reach out to any of us or connect with us on LinkedIn. Thank you very much, everyone.
We'll see you guys next month.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.